Shalom, shalom, Yisrael. That was Derek Ibob with the Great Awakening, because that's what we are right now. Most of you came around when your smartphones came around, but hey, we're going to do this thing. This is what they call the 27th of... Sorry, nobody heard me. Shabbat shalom, Yisrael. That was Derek Ibob with the Great Awakening. Okay, thanks, Mr. Vernon. I didn't even have the mic on me. This is Yahonatan Dawah. You hear Yahweh for Christians on WFBR 1590 AM. Now we're on number 36, Beha'alotecha. That means when you step up. Beha'alotecha, when you step up. I tell you, we're doing these 12 portions and we have less than 20 to go, and it's amazing how fast we went through. But I want to really press on Yisrael that if the truth that we're sharing does not meet the needs of the hearer, it is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. When the thief on the tree with Yahweh on the right side, who accepted him, didn't need to hear about not eating pork and crab cakes. He didn't need to hear about how to keep Passover. He needed to know that his salvation was in Yahweh HaMashiach. And he was saved, and he believed on him. He said, today you will see me in paradise. And he didn't know none of this stuff that we're going over right now. See, we're too busy trying to defend the truth, which you cannot defend. Yahweh when he's going to come and receive Yehuda and a 200 million man army attacks, he's going to destroy them by himself. Yehuda will be there and his companions. And then when the worldwide attack comes after the millennial kingdom, we ain't going to be defending Yahweh. We're not going to be defending the kingdom. We need to make sure, instead of cutting off the ear of Malchus, as Peter did in the Garden of Gethsemane, we need to be restoring, like Yahweh did. Restore that which was lost. Yahweh picked up his ear and restored it. And we need to be restoring that which was lost. That doesn't mean you're going to be watering down the truth. That's not going to happen here on this mic. The truth will be sent out. But it's going to be sent out in love and understanding and patience, which was given to you when you just learned a few years ago yourself. And we're going to teach this thing, and we're going to see why we're going over these 12 portions and how it matters today. These 12 portions, if you read these things and study these things, you're going to understand Daniel and Revelations better. Because when I get there, you're going to hear things from me you're not hearing from anywhere else, because I study the Torah. And I've been doing so for about 40 years plus. And last week we talked about, and again, just talking about that, realizing that we all have our various ministries. Everybody has what they're good at. Everybody has their talents. But realize that your ministry and your sacrifice does not equal worship. Don't forget worship and praise. You were born, your tongue is in your mouth to praise Yahweh. The breath is in your lungs to praise Yahweh. So don't get caught up because you are a great singer or you are great in teaching this, or you're a great preacher and forgetting to worship Yahweh, doing worship and praise. Because that's what you wake up for. And all the rituals you go through, where you want to put on seats and all this kind of stuff, and you keep the Shabbat and you keep the feast days and all that, that does not equal relationship. Don't forget relationship. This is the foundation of you. Do all this before you start talking about teaching somebody else. It's a higher order teaching, right below preaching. It's a high order. Do not be quick to be up in front of somebody's face trying to teach them something, slicing off people's ears. And not tailoring truth to what that person needs. Because remember, I'm not talking about your truth. I'm talking about truth. I'm talking about Hebrews who are teaching actual truth. Yeah, the people in the book, yeah, Yahweh's people are black. We all know that. Front and back, top, right, left, and center. But does everybody need to hear that at that time? Do the person you talk to, witnessing to at that time, is that what they need to have hit upside their head? How long you could go along hating the white man, hating the Jew man, sitting here cursing people out in English, the language of slavery? Learn some Hebrew first if you're going to at least try to curse somebody out. Already you're in a humbling position. You're in a land over here because of disobedience. We should be the most humble people on earth. We should be. And you're being given all this great knowledge. You need to be humble with it. I'm receiving this knowledge I'm getting. I'm saying, wow, Yahweh, please help me to be able to share it the way you're giving it to me. It's so beautiful. Are they going to be able to understand it? Are they going to be able to apply it? I'm doing my best here. Pray for me. Please. I'm going to try. Last week we talked about Yahweh Shua as a sword of bride, the wayward bride. And I'm telling you, the way I outlined that line by line, look at the YouTube download, the second one, not the first one. The second one has, the pictures and it outlines it better. The upgraded version, I call it. I might change that name later. But I have not, you can't Google that. Please do not mistake your thumb searching for my Googling research. Because if you just get all your knowledge from a smartphone, what's the difference between you and a 10-year-old who can Google the same information and read it? Having a knowledge does not mean you have understanding. You can give me a big old book on how to restore a 79 Corvette. So I got all the information right here. Does that mean I can go and get on this mic and teach it? Doesn't mean I know it. You cannot get your smartphone and Google this, a lot of the stuff I'm giving you. Ruach HaKodesh, download from the cloud from heaven, from the cloud from Hashemayim, download that. Because what I outlined last week, showing you from the Torah portions, and brought it all the way to the New Testament, what you call the New Testament, the Beha'alotecha, and how Yahweh Shua lined up and juxtaposed himself for us as the guilty bride. Man, that puts chill bumps on your head if you study it and look at it and follow that what I just taught last week, and is outlined in more detail than that in my second book. You can't Google that stuff, and I got plenty of stuff like that. We talked about Yahweh Shua as how he made the Nazarene vow. Hey, how about that knowledge? How he goes to Sinai where we had the covenant which we broke, full of hair. Then when he goes to Zion, he's bald-headed because he has broken his vow by killing 200-man army. So he's going to have to shave his head. So he's going to meet up with Ephraim bald-headed. We talked about the priestly benediction. So this Torah portion, Beha'alotecha, this is going to take us from Numbers 8:1 through Numbers 12:6. The hot Torah portion is in Zechariah 2:14 through 4:7. Let's get started. Now, it is very important. You cannot get this in one broadcast. You're going to have to go back and follow all these broadcasts because I'm going to drop some stuff on you, especially when we get to Daniel Revelations, that's going to shock you about this. And Yahweh's giving us hints in every Torah portion. Every Torah portion. I was going to break down this word last week in chapter 7, verse 89, where he referred to himself as him instead of Yahweh, but I don't have time. It's deep. But why he didn't use his name, he just referred to Yahweh as him. That's deep. But talking about this image of the beast, in Psalm 27:8, Dawid says, I seek your face, Yahweh, because you told me to seek your face. I'm seeking your face. And juxtapose that with the image of the beast. Whatever Shaitan does, it only works if it's close to the original. So there's something a lot to be said about the face of Yahweh and the image of the beast. There's something to be said about that. In Psalm 99:1, Dawid says that Yahweh lives between the cherubim. And then in Exodus 25:22, we know that he speaks from above. His voice comes from above the cherubim, from the mercy seat. The mercy seat is what the commandments are on. The 613, Deuteronomy, but remember I talked about in Deuteronomy 33:16, we haven't gotten to Deuteronomy yet. Moshe says that Yahweh lives in the bush. Remember I told you your ticket is in the thicket. Your ticket is in the thicket. And that's where he first called Moshe. That ram was dutiful, left the pack, left all the 99, and he went up the mountain and went into that thicket. Moshe following behind him, Yahweh came to him quiet, humbly in that burning bush that wouldn't burn. Quiet and humble. Moshe didn't even look. He covered his face. But then when he comes down with thunder on Sinai, 40 days later, then he wants to go ahead and look. But Yahweh says, I want to see your face. No, Yahweh says, no, you didn't want to look at me when I was in the thicket. There's something to be said about the face of Yahweh juxtaposed against the image of the beast. Be ready, because I'm going to drop something more on you when we finish these Torah portions. And I'm giving you hints already. We know that Yahweh is the self-existent one. That's what his name means. But Ha-Yah, which is the root word of it, means beacon. You should see it. It's a beacon. Catch your attention. And then Hey-Yah means ruin and calamity. Ho-Wah means ruin and mischief. So how can Yahweh's name be so juxtaposed with creation and ruin and mischief? They're right next to each other. Take off one letter, and you got life, and you got death. Life, and then you got death. Remember, tares do not grow in a whole field by itself. Nobody plants a whole field of tares and says we're going to wait till it's time to harvest them. No, tares grow with the wheat, and you cannot separate them. You're going to have to harvest them all and separate them then. The lies mirror the truth, and very closely where you can't even parse it unless you have Ruach HaKodesh. You're going to have to be serious in this. You cannot just approach Yahweh in an unrighteous manner. Remember Nadab and Abihu, and we're going to see what happened to Miriam today. Let me read Deuteronomy 32:39. Deuteronomy 32:39. Now see that I, even I, am he, and there is no mighty one besides me. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. Nor is there anyone who can deliver from my hand. He does them both. So what is going to do the destruction at the end? You know how Satan's going to have to mirror everything that Yahweh does on these latter days in his second coming. Ezekiel 8:3-5. Here's something I'm sure you've never considered and never read. Ezekiel 8:3-5. I wasn't even going to read this until this morning. I said, you know what, I'm going to read this. I was going to mention it, but I'm going to read it. Ezekiel 8, and then verse 3, and then verse 5. Verse 3 reads, he stretched out the, and this is talking about the vision that Ezekiel had on of the glory, if you will, the kabod of Yahweh in the temple. And this is the abomination in the temple. This is the abomination in the temple he saw. He stretched out the form of a hand and took me by a lock, which to tell you he's a brother. He had locks. It's right here in the Bible. So it shows you right there what Yahweh's people was. He grabbed him by his lock. If you have hair, hair is individual. When you have locks, that means it's congealed. So he grabbed him by his lock a lock of his hair. And the Ruach lifted me up between earth and heaven and brought me in a vision of Elohim to Jerusalem and to the door of the north gate. And I'm going to do a series of lessons on the gates. That's deep. Of the inner court, where the seat of the image of jealousy, was which provokes to jealousy. Something provoking Yahweh to jealousy. In the Bayat of Yah, in the Mishkan, in the tent of meeting. Something's provoking Yahweh to jealousy in the tent of meeting. Verse 5. Then he said to me, Son of man, lift your eyes now toward the north. Isn't that where we went to once the temple got burned down? So I lifted my eyes toward the north, and there north of the altar gate was this image of jealousy in the entrance. You need to tune in to Yahweh, Yahweh for Christians on WFBR 1590 every week. Get some of these transcripts that I have. Follow this so you can find out what's going on, because you think you know Daniel and Revelations. You do not unless you're studying this. Revelation 13 and 5, 8, 12, and 14 talks about this image of the beast. You're going to know exactly what it is. I will let you know. Remember Indiana Jones and the Ark of the Covenant. Remember that. So in chapter 8, verse 2 goes on, talks about how the wicks of the menorah, everything in these 12 portions point to Yahweh's shore. If you don't get that, then you're missing out on it. You're missing out something. It's not meant for today. If it was, see, here's the thing. If you read these first 5 books and it's only meant for that time, then why even have it? It's irrelevant for today. There's no need to read. If it is not applicable to us today, the menorah, the tent of meeting, everything that I've been talking about for months here, if it doesn't matter today, then don't even read it in the book. Just go ahead and have a New Testament Bible. It matters. I'm going to actually read verse 7 of chapter 8. Verse 7, chapter 8 of Bamidbar, which our Bible says Numbers. Thus you will do to them to cleanse them. Sprinkle water of purification on them, and let them shave all their body, and let them wash their clothes, so to make themselves clean. This is talking about the Levites who now, remember last week, or week before we had the Cohen getting consecrated, now the Levites, they had to shave their hair and go through the whole, and be sprinkled with water. So, how is that significant? Why am I reading that now, Yahonatan? Why are you reading that? See, remember, there was the ruddy heifer, which I have talked about a couple of years ago, and I'm going to have to talk a little bit about now, because the ruddy heifer was burned on the second day of Abib, while the tent of meeting was already set up and functioning already the day before. So that means, how did they get clean? They had to temporarily use the oil of anointment and the blood from the altar. That's what was used for the sanctification of the Kohanim. They had to use the oil and the blood on the garments of the Kohanim. Now that they have the ruddy heifer ritual was done, which I'm not going to detail it here now, and it's deep. But I did talk about that, and I do have it in my book. But now they are being purified with water. So you went from blood to water. I've been saying that this covenant, which you call the Old Testament to New Testament, takes you from blood to water. So now all cleansing has to be done with water. The whole temple sacrifice is with blood. You kill an animal, you're not going to be forgiven without blood. But you cannot be cleaned with blood. In Revelations, there's the tree. It has 4 rivers of water under it, not blood. The rest of the world is going to be given stank blood to drink. Those who eat from the tree of life is on top of the 4 rivers of water. So what Yahweh is telling Israel here, they didn't get the clue that this was a temporary ritual they had in killing animals, because that is not going to save them. It will forgive them, but it will not cleanse them, because you sin again. Remember I told you about how the legal system is. See, most of y'all probably haven't been locked up. But see, sometimes you ask for a step. You get a step, that means whatever dirt crime you did is not expunged. They just put it on hold. And if you be a good boy, good girl for how many years, whatever, then maybe they can expunge it. Yahweh gave them a step. They got a step. The blood covenant is a step. The sins are still there. They're covered. You're not going to be hanging around Yahweh's face for the rest of eternity with him covering you up. You got to be clean so you can interact with him, have a relationship with him like you're supposed to be doing now. We here, Yahweh for Christians. You better tune in. Tell your pastor, shut the church down on Sundays, and tune in. Tell them to shut it down. It should have been open yesterday. So we see that this is a hint in chapter 8, verse 7 of Beha'alotecha, which you call Numbers, of how this covenant was temporary. It's supposed to go from blood to water. And that's supposed to always be keeping these 613. He was given the 613 because we sinned with the golden ox. Let me read verse 13. Verse 13. And you will stand the Levites before Aaron and his sons, and then offer them like a wave offering to Yahweh. So they are offered to him like a wave offering. This raised portion, I'm telling you, I'm saying things that I cannot give it all right now because it'd be a 4-hour show, 4-hour broadcast. But this raised portion speaks again to Revelations and Daniel about this raised portion. Listen to that word raised. It's going to come back to you when we start talking about, when we go to what you love, which is the New Testament. Y'all get bored, y'all fall asleep with the Old Testament stuff, and that's why you don't know jack in the New Testament. You think you know, but you don't know. So we see that there are, and actually there are 3 waves mentioned. And I'm not going to read all these verses because I always run out of time. The Levites start serving at 25 years old, and they retire at 50. It's a strenuous labor. That's why y'all need to stop trying to take places that don't belong to you or think that this is a glorious job. So many people want to be a preacher. That's a tough job. These men only could work 25 years at this job. It's a very physical, demanding job. And then they still, for their life, from cradle to the grave, they serve Yahweh. But the physicality of it alone, they can only do it for 25 years. Carrying all that stuff and slaying all these animals and all that, that's hard work. That was harder than making bricks in Egypt, in Mizraim. Now going to chapter 9, verse 2, they start, and after their first year in the wilderness, they have their first Pesach. And by them talking about this Pesach in chapter 9, let you know that, again, that this Bible is not given to us in order. I highlighted that many times, that it's not in order, because now here we are in chapter 9 talking about the first Pesach in the wilderness, and this is on the 14th of Abib, but this really should have been before chapter 8. So in verse 7 we hear that they talk about the Pesach Sheni. This is the second Passover. This is the one that is kept 30 days after the first under certain conditions. Once again, this speaks directly to Daniel and Revelations. The second Passover speaks directly to Daniel and Revelations. So this is the genesis of it. If a person becomes defiled by a dead body, then, and also it could be because they're too far. If you're more than a day away, you can't get to keep the Passover by 12 noon, you could keep the second Passover. It's not for those who have the ability to keep the Pesach at the proper time. This is for those who have a legitimate reason not to keep it at the appropriate time. Now, these men came to Moshe and said, "Hey, what's up? It's not fair that we can't keep it. We were defiled, ritually defiled because of a dead body. We did what we were supposed to do. We buried the body like we were supposed to. Now we can't keep the Pesach? That's not right." Moshe said, "Hold on, let me go talk to Yahweh and see what's up." Isn't that powerful? There has never been a prophet before nor after Moshe who at a whim can go and talk to Yahweh like that. Just go, "All right, hold up, I got you, I'll be right back." No one else could do that. That's because this man was always, he's the first 7-Eleven. Always open and ready. Moshe is the original 7-Eleven. He was ready 24/7. And he went, and Yahweh added on the distance. He said, okay, and he gave the rules for the second Pesach. That's going to play into some scriptures that you're not quite understanding when we get to later after we finish these Torah portions. That second Passover is important. Now, let's read verse 8 of chapter 9. Verse 8 of chapter 9, and it reads, "And Moshe said to them, stand still that I may hear what Yahweh will command concerning you." So that's what I just said, how Moshe said that, hold on. Now, what I really wanted to read was that, is the next verse. When Yahweh at the end, he says, "This will stand for all your generations forever." So that's important, that Yahweh said that this second Passover is to stand forever in our time as a created in this world, because that's going to lead, and because Yahweh knows what's going to happen in the latter days, how it's going to come up, how that is important, how that's going to come up later. So I'm keep repeating over to you now to read these Torah portions and study, because that's going to come up in Daniel and Revelations. Now in verse 9 it talks about the trumpet sounding and how that is supposed to go on. And now, going up in chapter 9, talking about the trumpets, the silver trumpets. I talked about that in my second book. These two silver trumpets represent Adam and Eve, Adam and Mother Hawa. Now, these trumpets are important because, again, in Daniel Revelations, this is going to be sounded. This is not the shofar, the shofarim. The shofar are the horns. There are 4 trumpet blows of the horns in Revelations, and they come from the original sacrifice by Yahweh. He killed 2 rams. That's 4 horns. 2 rams, 4 horns. And those skins was used to cover up Adam and Eve, what you call Adam and Eve. What happened to those 4 horns? They get blown in the last days. But you still have these other horns that have to be blown. You have 2 silver horns that also get blown. There are actually 3 silver horns that get blown. But 2 of them represent Adam and Eve. And why silver? Because that is the original color of man. The original color of man. I have a whole chapter on that. So this is meaningful. And this again points to Daniel Revelations. And when Yahweh hears these trumpets, they have various blows and means various things. And I'm not going to go through all that, but each blow, but you're going to have to know them, because in the latter days you're going to hear very different trumpets blowing, and for different things, different soundings means different things. It tells you who is to gather up, who's not to gather up, where to move, when to stop. These trumpet blows mean something. This is not information that is just random for no reason. You get bored reading about the trumpets and what it sounds like and what it blows, and then when you start reading Daniel Revelation, you're not going to understand things. These trumpet blowing is just like a child calling to his papa, and nothing touches a father's heart like hearing this child call out to him for help. When you hear that blowing, he comes and he moves. Yahweh moves for his people. Just like you would move for your child. You're in the house, cooking or looking at TV, and you hear your child out in the street calling for you. You stop what you're doing. You come. Your child blows that trumpet. You move. Same thing here. Now, I'm going to have to get myself a silver trumpet. I blow that shofar, but I don't have a silver trumpet. So now we find that Yahweh says throughout all of our generations, just like with the second Passover, the trumpets for all our generations, they must be blown. And the times he gave us in verse 10 of chapter 10 are at the appointed time, the new moons. That means every new moon. Now I don't have the silver, but I can blow my shofar on the new moons. And then whenever you're glad and happy, and over your peace offerings. So there is a reason to blow these trumpets, not just during the Feast of Trumpets. That means you'll be only blowing it once a year. You blow it every month at the new moons, at the appointed times. Excuse me. And when you're glad and happy and over your peace offerings. And we know these trumpets are different than the shofar because it's hot shots rahim. Remember we talked about that last year. So these trumpets, Yahweh puts a barrier. That's, if you look at the Hebrew, original Hebrew, it's like a barrier around his people who blow these silver horns. And only everyone's not qualified to blow these horns. But he puts just like a shepherd, Yahweh should say he is the good shepherd. He puts protection and barrier around the sheep. You're his sheep. You blow the horn, you call a papa, and he puts a barrier, a protection around you. And verse 11 talks about how the camp is broken down and how we move. This happened on the 20th of Ziph. Ziph is the second Hebrew month of the year. The first month became Abib. So we're talking about our relationship year. Not the legal year, our relationship year. Remember, all this is about relationship. He's given us rituals we're supposed to direct us to relationship. The rituals are supposed to open our eyes to see relationship. There's ritualistically things you're supposed to do with your wife and your children. But you love them, so you do things with them out of relationship. And if you don't do that, have that connection, then you have a robotic relationship with your children or your wife. You know what? I want to stop and talk about that. Can you imagine that if Yahweh, when he made Adam, and Mother Hawa, then he went on and made Cain, and remember, everything was a twin, made Cain and his sister, and then Abel and his sister, and then made Seth and his sister, and he did all the making instead of letting us do the making. He did that for a reason, for us to understand relationship and family. Can you imagine understanding Yahweh, reading the Bible without being in a situation of being married or having children? Can you imagine? How could you quite understand the Father, Son, and Ruach HaKodesh? How can you understand us being a bride that became wayward? Last week we talked about the wayward bride. How could you understand the concept of a wayward bride? How could we understand the concept of reconciling a wayward bride to the faithful husband? How can we understand the concept of Ruach HaKodesh birthing us, children, being children of the Father? How can we understand the concept of Yahweh being our Father? How can we understand the concept of relationship with Yahweh without having families? This is why he gave us a horizontal relationship, so we understand the vertical relationship. These 12 portions, he kept saying, I am married to you. I love you. I'm married to you. And he came down from Sinai to marry us, but we messed up. And the whole thing about these 12 portions is understanding relationship. If you don't have understanding of the horizontal relationship, you're not going to understand the vertical relationship. And he put it in terms of husband, wife, and children. He did that for a reason. Yahweh don't need us. We need him. He can make everything, but he allowed us, he co-opted us into making one another by way of relationships. And as such, he taught us how to do it righteously. Because you can go ahead, can someone have a relationship, make a child by raping somebody? Can't they do that? Can two men make a baby? Just two men get together and make a baby? Can a man and an animal get together and make a baby? Can a woman lay with an animal and make a baby? Can a man make a machine and make a baby? So Yahweh had to teach us the righteous ways of relationships. This is not trying to say, this is how you get into the kingdom by keeping 613. No, he's teaching you right ways of relationships. Right ways of having horizontal interaction. So you can know the right way to have a vertical interaction with him. That's what this is all about. Please follow these things weekly so you don't think that I'm teaching legalism. I'm teaching relationship with Yahweh Shua. So we find another deep concept that's just going to go over your head in Daniel Revelations when you read Beit Numbers 10 and 11. You see that they broke camp on the 20th of Ziph, the second month of the year. This is 10 days short of a full year from when they arrived at Sinai for marriage. How does that matter? Remember that one of the so-called churches was held 10 more days of persecution. They was given 10 more days of persecution. Is that random? Does that matter? Here it is right here in Numbers. It connects directly to Revelations chapter 2. When about the one so-called church being held for 10 days of extra persecution. We get this number 40 that pops up a lot. 40 days from Egypt to Sinai. There was 40 days times 2 that Moses was on the mountain. 40 days twice fasting and getting us to 613. 40 years in the wilderness. And then we know Moshe's life is segmented in 40s. 40, 40, and 40. See, this number generally symbolizes a period of testing. We failed the test when he was up the mountain 40 days. We failed it. He came down on the 39th day. We whoring around, following the Erev Rav with the golden ox. See, with 40 days, we pass the test. It's our trial period. And then our triumph. We need to endure. Throughout history, we know 40 was very important for Israel. The spies went out for 40 days to spy out the land. We know rain fell on the whole world for 40 days and 40 nights. Ezekiel laid on his right side for 40 days for Judah. They were already in Babylon 30 years. When the prophecy came for him to lay on his side 390 years for us, 40 days laid on his right side for Judah. And by the way, 390 plus 70 is 400, and 390% is 460. So we see that this 40, and what did Yahweh do? He fasted 40 days before being tempted by Hasatan himself. What about Nineveh? And this is important. This again goes into Revelations. Nineveh was given 40 days to repent. We have Jonah preaching to Nineveh. They're not Hebrews. This shows, again, goes over our Hebrew people's heads. Yahweh always intended for this Besorah, this message that I'm teaching right now, this message that you heard on Shabbat yesterday, was always intended to go to the non-Hebrews, to the whole world. It went to Nineveh, and they got 40 days to repent, and they did. 40 days. That's going to go into Daniel and Revelations. Just like if you read it now, you're going to make the connection. 40 lashes was the limit that you could get. Yahweh sure took 40 lashes. And matter of fact, the rule was by Israel was to give 39 lashes, just in case they gave too many by accident. Yahweh sure took his full 40. Wasn't there a president who promised us 40 acres and a mule? Why 40 acres? Why 40 acres? Of course, we didn't get it. So we see that this 40 means something. It is, and almost forgot. 40 days from the resurrection to the ascension. 40 days from the resurrection to the ascension. He is returning. He is returning. So we go out into the wilderness of Paran, and we move along because I don't want to get caught short again. And then we see that Judah, there's a certain order that Yahweh is about order. He's not sloppy and messy. Everybody camped in order, and they decamped in order. And we camped around the Mishkan, the tent of meeting, as a circle. Everything your eyeballs have seen of the temple, this rectangle temple, and us camped out like a cross is a lie. Everything every image your eyeballs took into your brain, block it from your heart. It was not a rectangle temple, and we was not camped out like a cross. The Mishkan, the tent of meeting, is a dome, just like the earth, and we camped around it. We encircled it, and there's plenty of Hebrew words to tell you that. I'm not gonna go over that now, and that's the way we moved. It's just like a watch, timepiece. Why is it called a tent of meeting? I talk about this over and over again, because Yahweh does everything by time, and prophecy is not prediction. Prophecy is discernment of time. So if I'm saying a lot of things, saying like I'm a prophet, what I'm doing is discerning time. Yahweh does everything in patterns. Everything is in patterns. He says in Isaiah 46, I declare the end from the beginning. He told us the end from the beginning in the very first word of the Torah, Bereshit. Matter of fact, in the very first letter of the very first word of the Torah, Bayet, that he is building his house on his son. And what Yahweh is doing is revealing to us over time as he opens his hand. Remember the example I used of you. If I have 4 quarters in my hand, and I told my son, hey, I'm going to give you, you can have what's in my hand. And if I open up my hand partially, he sees 1 quarter. He's happy. He's grabbing for the quarter. But if you wait, he see open my hand more, he see 2 quarters. He becomes more happy. He gets 2 quarters. If he waits, let me reveal what's in my hand. I open my hand further. He sees 3 quarters. Wait. There's a pattern here. As I open my hand fully wide, he sees all that I had to offer him. Yahweh's giving us, we're in our 4th quarter, the full revelation of Yahweh. When the cloud signaled on top to stop, we stopped. Then the Merarites and the Gershonites, they embarked before the Kohathites, and they would erect the tent of meeting, and by the time the Kohathites arrived with the ark, then the other Kodesh items, the tent of meeting, will be erected and waiting. And then, then at that time, the Kohathites will go in and unpack things inside the tent of meeting. At the rear was Dan. Dan was our rear guard. And again, remember I told you how names mean things. They're not random. The leader of Dan was Ahazar, who means brother of assistance. Now we see that Yethro was a very important man. He has a brief story, but it's very important. I broke down his name. I'm not going to break it. I broke it down in original Ibarit. I'm not going to do that today, but his name on a surface level means love. He was renamed Hobab, which means love. But the original name means excellence and posterity. It means to remain. And how is this important? He refused to remain with Moshe. He did convert, yes, that's when he changed his name to Hobab. But he did not remain with them. See, this is a great prophet. Yethro is a prophet, a good one. And he knew that Israel was not worthy, not ready to go into the Holy Land, into the Kodesh land. He was like, I'm good. I'm fine. You got my daughter. You got my 2 sons. I'm straight. I'm good. I'm going back to Midian. And you can and how did this man know this? Remember, Yethro, if you go to Jasher 67 and 41, Yethro took that rod that was given to Yusuf by Jacob. He took that rod when he left Mizraim, and he went to Midian, and that's when he started Midian, and he planted that rod in his garden, knowing that the man who was going to bring Israel out of Mizraim would be worthy enough to extract that rod out of the earth. This is where you get that story of the boy who had the sword and the stone and pulled out the stone. He was unworthy. They copied it from the Torah. Moshe, eventually as the time goes on, was the only, he pulled out that rod from the earth that had Yahweh's name on it, Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh. That made Yethro know this is the man that's going to bring Israel out of Mizraim. And he gave him his daughter. So this man was a prophet, a great prophet. He had the foresight to take that rod, and we know eventually that rod ends up being planted by Dawid into the Mount of Olives and grows into an almond tree on the Mount of Olives. Yahweh dies on that tree. That was 1,000 years before that. Hezekiah took off this snake that Moshe put on the rod. That's a whole beautiful story. Again, you learn it right here. So we see that finally in verse 33, they take up their tent pins and depart. And so now they got to 613. They don't leave until verse 33, okay, of chapter 10. And this is after getting all the 613, which went over their head. They did not relate it to a greater promise. Obviously, they have proven themselves to be unworthy, and they're going to keep on proving themselves to be unworthy here. So it's not because it's all about them. Whatever Yahweh gives you, believe me, it's not about you. He gave it to you to be a conduit by him to others. And Israel didn't get it. They thinking it's all about them, like they stuff don't stink. But it does. Let's read verse 35 and 30. Well, actually in the Torah it has 36, but this ends on 35. Now KJV ends on 35. And it says, and actually does have 36. So it was wherever the ark set out that Moshe said, "Rise up, O Yahweh, let your enemies be scattered, and let those who hate you flee before you." And when it rested, he said, "Return, O Yahweh, to the many thousands of Yisrael." See how Moshe cried out whenever the tent left and when it come back. Now, these 2 verses are important because they explain a great spiritual concept that Yisrael did not get. That it was not about them right then and there. There's something future, greater happening that will impact the entire world. Not just them taking Canaan, the land of Canaan. Moshe cried this out every time before they left and when they stopped. and they did not get it. And too many of us are not getting it now. We got people thinking only Hebrews being saved, only black people being saved, and all this kind of immature stuff. This is immaturity and is unimaginative. We need to grow up. We need to get out of anger. We need to get it. Dawid got it. Let me read Psalm 68. Psalm 68, 1. Psalm 68, 1, and it reads, "Let Yahweh arise. Let his enemies be scattered. Let those also who hate him flee before him." So he got it. He knew that the tent of meeting was this movement made the enemies flee. And this speaks to, remember again, I'm telling you, I'm giving it away here. The Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant, how even as you look at the stories, they look at the history of how Hitler tried to find it so he can go ahead and win the World War II over it. Put it before the enemies, and they flee. And they flee. This had power in this ark that make the enemies flee and scatter. And this was the whole thing what Indiana Jones was about. How they wanted the ark as a weapon. But you cannot use Yahweh. You cannot use Yahweh. Yahweh, you can access Yahweh's power, but Yahweh is not your genie to rub on the bottle. He comes out and does whatever comes out of your mouth. But that's what this is about. This Ark of the Covenant, Dawid knew that the power was in it. But remember, when it was taken, the Philistines couldn't use it. They took it. They broke out in boils and hives and stuff because they took the Ark of the Covenant. But they could not use. You cannot use Yahweh. People need to stop. People trying to this day are trying to use their mouth like the Ark of the Covenant. Get on their knees and putting up their prayers, naming it and claiming it, blabbing it and grabbing it. They're gonna make Yahweh do something. Going to use Yahweh instead of having a relationship with him and understanding what he wants from you, and then you can pray properly. Then you can understand, because today you are the tent of meeting. You are the Mishkan. The temple has been destroyed and burnt down. We're scattered all over. Now each individual, we are the Mishkan. You need to pray correctly. Pray properly, because whatever you pray for, you will get if you're praying properly. Do not use your mouth like it's the Ark of the Covenant. You're going to use the power of it for your selfishness. In chapter 11, verse 1, once again, in our we follow the area of Rav, who are on the outskirts of the camp. They incite us to complain against Yahweh. What did they do? Cry, and we cried against him because we wanted meat. We wanted meat. We wanted something to eat, like we had back in Egypt. Trying to go back to Egypt because we wanted meat. The manna wasn't good enough. And if you break down these Hebrew words, you see that we were crying more than, it was just, you could have meat. You had your offerings, and some of those offerings you could eat. So it wasn't about the meat, it was about them now having to accept the way of life. They did not want this relationship with Yahweh. And you know they didn't get it because whenever they were being paying for their complaints against Yahweh, they cried to Moses. Moses didn't create them. They didn't cry to Yahweh, they cried to Moses. They cried to the law. They didn't get it. They complained, then Yahweh, they break out into a plague, and then they cry to Moses instead of crying to Yahweh, which means all these sacrifices they were doing, they were not getting it. They were not getting it. They're supposed to have a relationship with Yahweh. If they have a relationship with Yahweh, they would not have been complaining in the first place. But if they do complain, we all sin, they should have been crying out to Yahweh, not to Moshe. And if you read this, you see that it was the mixed multitude that the Bible tells us, which is the Erev Rav, which is Esau, who still was in the camp, who incited us to complain. And they always hung out on the outskirts, the Bible says. They wanted to be on the outskirts so they could be behind the scenes causing Israel to sin, trying to get us to go back to Mizraim. To this very day, as I speak, on the 27th of June, 2021, we have Esau, the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude in our camps, sowing discord. Wheat being sown with tares. Tares are in our camps, breaking us apart. You need to have leadership of discernment to keep the area of Rav, Esau, out of your camps. Or at least he's got to be taught and they got to be filtered. They're in our camps. They need to be taught and they need to receive it or be filtered out. Yahweh was purging them out bit by bit. But just like a bad disease, it keeps coming back. That itch keeps coming back. Let me read Psalm 34 and 8. Psalm 34 and 8. And it reads, "Oh, taste and see that Yahweh is Tob, good. Blessed is the man who trusts in him." You see how we denied the manna, not realizing that the manna represented Yahweh Shua, the bread of life. Didn't want it. We wanted meat. Meat. So that means we wanted to kill something. Something had to die to put in our stomachs. And most of us got fat around our stomach. I know I do. Don't even need all that. We wanted something to kill something. Something had to sacrifice its life to satisfy our temporal needs. And it's a temporary need. You poop it out. Hours there, you poop it right on out. Yahweh gave us manna from heaven. All we had to do was walk outside of our tent, go down to the ground and pick it up. Full of olive oil from heaven. Representing Yahweh Shua and Ruach HaKodesh. We didn't want it. Erev Rav said, you don't want that. You want meat. And we wanted it so much we were eating it with the blood on top of that. Oh, how in the world? But Dawid got it. He said, taste and see that Yahweh is good. Yahweh. When you have a relationship with Yahweh, it tastes good. It feels good. You know it's good. You don't need to have the things of this earth so much. Yes, you still have rights to have certain things because you are flesh. You need fleshly things. But not at the expense of what is eternal. We're talking about here. It told us you're going from blood to water. The blood covenant to the water covenant. The temporary blessings of having the promised land to the eternal blessings of being in the kingdom of Yahweh. And we're not getting it. We're not getting it. Moshe said, you know what, Yahweh, kill me. I can't bear these people. Kill me. If you're just trying to show how bad I am through these people, take me. Yahweh said, okay, I got you. Go ahead and choose 70 men to help you out. Go ahead and help a brother out. And this is, now that means that first 70 must have been dead. Because remember, they did this before. There was another 70. We so rebelled. And remember, the leaders, remember I gave you that word. I can't remember the word was. But it was a word for leadership that's not in the Torah. It's not a real word. Because they were bad leaders. And this is not the Yethro gave Moses 70 leaders. He told him how to pick 70 leaders. But that was for legal stuff. This is different. So 70 leaders. Now 70 means something. 70 is the number of opportunity, potential, and completion. And 70 souls entered Mizraim. And there are 70 core nations and core tongues on the whole earth. Yahweh Shua told us to forgive our enemies 70 times 7. What does 70 times 7 equal? Exactly 490. 490, that's the number of Ephraim. Remember? 490 is in Babylon. 490 years in Babylon. See how I'm tying all this together? See how I'm bringing this all together? You see how you can't just Google this stuff that I'm telling you? Grow up. Babies Google and babble. 70 years we will take 70 offerings at Sukkot, and in Judah was in Babylon for 70 years. 70 AD, the temple was burned down. Yahweh Shua sent out 70 disciples to teach the Besorah message, which you call the gospel. 70 has a significant meaning. And actually, there was 72. Who's the two? Moshe and Aaron. Who's the two? Elijah, Enoch. Who's the two? Yahweh, Yahweh Shua. 70 plus 2. Now we see that Eldad and Medad was chosen specifically by Yahweh for the special Sanhedrin council. The Sanhedrin is supposed to help Yahweh out, help Moshe out. And even though they declined initially, but Yahweh chose them personally. So they get chosen with this. Now let's go, and then they prophesied. What did Yahushua say? Would you call Joshua? Rebuked them for prophesying. But that's not what what was to be done. Moshe was like, no, let them all prophesy. Let's go to New Testament, because this all speaks to the New Testament. Luke 19:39. Since y'all just love the New Testament. Luke 19:39, and it reads, and some of the Pharisees called, this is after, remember Yahweh came in on a donkey, and they said, blessed be the king who comes in the name of Yahweh. Shalom to Hashemayim, Kabod, and Aram, the highest. So then the Pharisees said, rebuke him, the Pharisees who were the Edomites, because this crowd are calling, do you hear what they're calling you? Rebuke them. So what Yahushua didn't know he was doing was he was siding with Hasatan, saying, rebuke these men for prophesying. Now, I understand it was for a good reason, because they were prophesying that Moshe would not lead them into the promised land, but Yahushua would lead them into the promised land. Now, Yahushua served Moshe. Serving the Torah is even greater than studying it. Be a servant of the Torah. Do it. Be obedient to it. So Yahushua was obedient to it. And we know that Yahushua is spelled the same name as Yahweh-Shua. Yahweh-Shua. Yahweh-Shua is the eternal covenant. Yahushua led us into the promised land for the temporary covenant. Isn't it very fitting? You have Yahushua for the temporary covenant and Yahweh-Shua for the eternal covenant. Isn't that beautiful? Seamless. How I'm bringing this all together in a full circle. You got Yahushua, who brought us into the Canaan land, and we conquered under him. That's the temporal blood covenant, the good promises. Yahweh-Shua, who's going to come again. He's coming at the appointed time for those who are ready to see and are looking for his face, not the image of the beast. Yahweh-Shua is going to give us the eternal covenant, the better covenant, the covenant of water of eternal life. Wow. Chapter 12, verse 1, I only got a few minutes left. Miriam and Aharon opposed Moshe. I'll talk about that more last week. But if you read Yashar, you see that what it was about. Okay? So, you know, she opposes Moshe for the Ethiopian wife he had. Again, all throughout here is messages of how Yahweh's people are black. But we're going to go into that more next week. Next week, though, is Torah portion number 37. And this is going to be Torah portion. We're going to learn about the seats. Oh, yes. I don't have it written down here. But I do remember this one about the seats and some other things here. So until next week, Yehonathan Dawid here, Yahweh for Christians on WFBR. Shalom Aleichem. Peace be on you. Brother, be singing that thing, man. Brother, be singing that thing.